Let's talk about how to choose your proteins wisely. Now, the problem with protein is that in nature, protein never comes as a complete protein. It comes with fat. And there's such a thing called the insulin index, which looks at the protein effect of insulin. So in other words, the leaner the protein, the more the spike in insulin. If you want to get into ketosis very, very deeply, you don't want to do the lean protein. You want to do more fattier protein. Now, if we look at the ketogenic diet as far as a pie chart, 5% should be carbs, and I failed to also add another 5% for salad and vegetables because I don't count those into the equation. So roughly 10% carbs, but half of that should be vegetable, and 20% protein. And then we have 70% fat. So we're just going to focus on the fat and the protein right now. So if we look at 70% fat to 20% protein, we're looking at the percentage of calories. And you can see, wow, that's a lot of fat to protein, right? It's actually 3.5 times more fat than protein. But if we take a look at the actual weight in grams, simply because there's more condensed energy in fat than protein, then we're dealing with a different ratio. We're dealing with 1.56 to 1 ratio. So we're talking about weight, okay? Because when people say, wow, you're eating this high-fat diet, you're eating 70% of your calories fat, it's really kind of like a little more than a 1-to-1 ratio. So when you really look at it from a weight point of view, it doesn't look that unreasonable, okay? So the more that we can align ourselves with this ratio right here, the more truly keto it is. Now, if we increase this even more, we have more fat to protein, then we're going to generate more ketones. And this is what they do for epileptic children. The diet is very, very high in fat because they're trying to generate enough ketones from the fat to really make it work. And when you have more fat to protein, it's really good on your digestive system. It's a lot better than doing leaner proteins. And of course, that depends on what type of fat you're talking about. But what happens too is when you increase more fat, you increase more stimulation of bile from your liver to actually digest the fat. People who are on a low-fat diet end up with a deficiency of bile, and they're more at risk for getting gallstones, which is interesting. All right, let's take a look at this chart right here. It's very, very interesting. So we have fat and protein. We're just looking at kind of the ratios here. An egg is the 1-to-1 ratio. So if you're eating egg, maybe you add a little more fat to that. You could do it several ways. You could add a little butter or whatever. Hamburger, 2-to-1. That's a pretty good ratio. Twice as much fat as protein. So hamburger is a really good thing to do for keto. I consume a lot of hamburger. Steak, look at this, 1-to-2. Wow. Most steak that you eat is just not fatty enough, and people tend to cut off the fat. They don't eat the fat. So if you're going to do a steak, make sure you add more fat to that meal. All right, chicken. Actually, it's lower in fat, higher in protein, so there's twice as much protein as fat. But I'm not sure about this one because here's the point. If you're eating this with the skin where there's some fat underneath it, this might even out to a 1.1 ratio. So always eat the skin on the chicken. All right, bacon, 1-to-1. Now you would think it'd be a lot higher in fat. It is, but you're frying off all the fat. So if you're doing bacon, you want to actually add some more fat to the meal. Okay, look at this, a pecan, 7-to-1. Pecan is very, very fatty. Of course, we're not talking about saturated fats. We're talking about omega-6 fatty acid. And there's a little bit of carb. Okay, there's a tiny bit of carb. But pecans are a really good nut to consume. I consume pecans probably on a daily basis. This is a good ratio. All right, now let's talk about the peanut. It's 2-to-1. It's a good ratio. But many times if I eat a meal, I will have some peanut butter with celery just to get a little bit more fat in the diet. All right, cod liver. Now, I'm not talking about cod liver oil. I'm talking about cod liver. It's right here. Check this out. Icelandic cod liver. Maybe you've never heard about it before. There's many different brands. Most of them are wild caught. Okay, so that's the one you want to get. I don't know if they get it all from the same place, but this is quite good. Look at the ratio, 5 times as much fat to protein. This is definitely ketogenic food. And the oil in it actually is all from the cod liver, okay? So I'm not saying you're gonna drink the whole thing. You could, and maybe you should. You can actually put it in the refrigerator and have a little bit each day. But yesterday I consumed an entire can. It was a little too much fat in one sitting. But if you did a half of this, you'd be great. But yesterday I was not hungry for the entire day. I think I just had one meal, and normally I'll have 2, but this was extremely satisfying. Summer sausage. Now, what is summer sausage? It's a type of sausage, here's an example, that you normally don't need to refrigerate it unless you open it up and then you put it in the refrigerator. This one, it says to refrigerate. Okay, that's cool. But this is something that I consume on a regular basis as well. Of course, this one is organic, uncured summer sausage. The problem is trying to find summer sausage without dextrose, which is synthetic sugar, and without nitrates. Now, this does have celery juice, and I did a video on this topic. It's true that celery juice does have nitrates, and so therefore people say, well, it's the same as the nitrates you would get from other sources, right? But there's really no studies that I could find that said that consuming celery juice with the nitrates has any harmful effects. So it may create some harmful effects, but if you know of a study, put it down below. But I'm still alive. I've been consuming this for a long time. So this has organic beef, sea salt. All right, and then it has organic honey. Now, I know what you're going to say. You said not to have honey. This is a very, very small amount. I'm okay with it. It's like 1 gram per serving, so it's pretty low. And then we have organic spices, cultured celery juice powder, lactic acid starter culture. But this is like a 2-to-1 ratio, so it's actually perfect. If I'm in a hurry, I can just chop this off. I might add some cheese to it. I might just have it by itself, and I'm good to go. And also, Lucy, our little granddaughter, who's 2 right now, loves this, and it's pretty healthy. And I know someone is going to want to know, where do I get this? You're going to have to look it up. I have no affiliation with these companies, but I will put a link down below of the names of these so you can do the research on them. Okay, then we get to the macadamia nut. Look at this, 11.5 fat to a 1 protein ratio. This is quite killer nut in a good way. All right, sardines. Now check this out. Here's an example of some sardines. You would think it'd be fattier, but look at it, has twice as much protein as fat, but it comes in oil. So a lot of that oil is going to shift this. It's probably going to be like a 1-to-1 ratio. So this is, I consume sardines. It's totally fine. You need to do it. But look at this, salmon, 1.5 to 1. So apparently salmon fits this closest. It's the ideal keto food. I love salmon. I love fatty fish. I consume salmon on a regular basis. Salmon also has selenium to counter any potential mercury that's in that fish. But of course, you want to do wild caught. All right, in summary, if you want to get into a little deeper ketosis, focus more on the proteins that are higher in fat. Thanks for watching. Hey, before you go real quick, I have a course entitled How to Bulletproof Your Immune System. It's a free course. I want you to take it. And here's why. Here's you. Here is your environment. Everyone is focused on this over here, avoiding your environment. But what about here? What about strengthening your immune system? That's what's missing. This course will show you how to bulletproof yourself, and so you can tolerate and resist your environment much better by strengthening your own immune system. I put a link down in the description right down below. Check it out and get signed up today.